Daf Lamed Vav Amud Beis, the Mishnah towards the top of the Yomid. The axiomatic principle of the Eruv is that it has to have a kinyan, there has to be a kinyan in the Eruv on the onset of Shabbos. The Eruv can't be kaina during the Shabbos. On the onset of Shabbos, the Eruv has to be in place, his shisa has to be determined to be in a particular place, and then he has 2,000 amas from that place. The issue that we're dealing now with in the Mishnah and the Gemara to follow is that, let's say the determination has been made only later. Do we apply the principle of Breira, that say Huvra Dovra Lemafreya, that retroactively will consider his Eruv to be in place and these kind of shvisa on the onset of Shabbos, and therefore the Eruv is kosher? So it will be therefore based on whether or not we apply the principle of Breira. Do we say Yesh Breira or Ein Breira? So Zak the Mishnah, Masna Adam Eruv Vaimer. A person can make it tonight, a condition with his Eruv, and he can say Imbo and Nachem in a Mizrach Eruv Lamar. If the Nachem are coming from the east, so he wants to avoid them. As we'll see in the Gemara, we're talking about a tax collector. He doesn't want a confrontation, so he wants to avoid them. So he says, makes a condition. Now, he doesn't know where they're coming. They haven't come yet, and he doesn't know where they're coming. So he makes a condition and say, if they come to the east, I want my Eruv to be to the west. So he puts down two loaves. He puts down two breads, two sudas. One is 2,000 amas from where he is to the east, and one to the west. So he says, if the Nachem come in the east, then he wants the Eruv that he put down on the west, he wants that one to be kind of shvisa. That will enable him to go from where he is, from his town, to the Eruv. If it's not more than 2,000 hours away, it can't be more than 2,000 hours away because it has to be accessible. And then he can go from the Eruv, he can go another 2,000 amas. That means he can go 4,000 amas to the west direction. And he makes it similar tonight. He says, Minamar Eruv Mizrach. And he says, if the Nachem come from the west, he wants to go to the east. He wants to be as far as away as he can to the east. So he wants the Eruv in the east to be the one that's kind of. Imbo Lekan Lekan. If they come from both directions, Lamalkam Sheret Seilach, then whichever one he chooses, he wants to be able to choose it on Shabbos. And whatever he chooses on Shabbos, that's where he should go. And he should say, Huvra Davar Lamafreya, that whatever he ultimately chooses, that's the one that Bein Hashmashos was predestined to be his Eruv, and the Eruv is an Eruv. Loikan or Loikan, if they don't come to any direction, Harenik Ben Ayiri, he doesn't want the Eruv at all to be Chal, he wants to be like a resident of the city, and then has 2,000 amas in each direction from the city. Similarly, another case, a similar case, if the Talmud Chacham comes to the east, so here we're assuming he wants to go to the place where the Talmud Chacham is, he wants to meet him, he wants to hear the shiur, so he wants to go to that place, so he says, if the Chacham comes to Mizrach, Mizrach, I want my Eruv to be in the east, so therefore I can go 2,000 amas from that Eruv and come to the place where the Talmud Chacham is. If he's coming to the west, I want to go to him to hear the shiur, so I want my Eruv in the west to be kind of. If there's a Talmud Chacham that comes to one place and another one to another place, so meaning if there are two Talmid Chachamim, then I'll choose whatever I choose on Shabbos. We should say Huvra Davar Lamafreya, that was his Eruv from the onset of Shabbos. If nobody comes, Harenik Ben Ayiri, I want to be like a resident of my city, and therefore have 2,000 amas from each direction from my city. Rav Yehuda says, Im haya echad mehem rabbi holach etzel rabbi. He says, so based on the way we have it in our Mishnah, that fundamentally Rav Yehuda agrees with the Tanakama and agrees that he can make the condition and agrees to the principle of Eruv, the principle of Breira rather, that Rav Yehuda agrees to the principle of Breira, But he says that if one of them was his Rebbe Muvak, then over there he can't choose to go to the other direction. He goes to the direction of his Rabbi, because over there we will assume that it's an umdana, that's what he really had in mind. He would want to go to the place of his Rebbe. So therefore, wherever his Rebbe ends up going, we say that was the place that was predestined to be his Eruv. But if both of them are his Rebbe, so then there's no umdana that one direction is more likely than the other, or what he would have chosen more than the other, then he can choose either one he wants. So according to this version, both the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yehuda agree to the principle of Breira, and therefore you can determine later on Shabbos, you can determine which one of the Eruvim you want to be effective. And we will say that that in fact that was the Erev that was predestined to be on the onset of Shabbos. And Rabbi Yehuda is arguing on a particular point. He just says that if one of the directions was his Rebbe, we have to assume that that's the direction he would have wanted to go. When Rabbi Yitzchak taught it, he taught in the Brisa, he taught opposite of the way the Mishnah has it. Kasha Nachrim Nachrim and Kasha Chacham Chacham. So it's a Kasha from the Nachrim Nachrim and the Chacham Chacham. Now we have in our Mishnah that in Legabe the Nachrim, he wanted to avoid them and he wanted to go in the opposite direction. So he said if the Nachri comes from the Mizrach, he wants to go to the Marab, or vice versa. The way he learned it is that he wants to go to the direction of the Nachrim. So if the Nachri is in the Mizrach, he wants his Erev in the Mizrach to be effective. Now, our Mishnah said that the Chacham, he wants to go to the direction of the Chacham. In his Brisa, in Rabbi Yitzchak, the way he taught it, he wants to go the opposite direction from the Chacham. So it's a Kasha Nachri Nachrim, Kasha Chacham Chacham. So the Gemara answers Nachrim and Nachrim like Kasha Habe Par Hagbana Habe Moradamos. When it says in by the Nachrim, so the version that we have in the Mishnah that he wants to avoid the Nachrim, that's talking about a tax collector. So he wants to run away from him, he wants to avoid him. In the Brisa, it's talking that he wants to greet him, it's talking about the mayor or the people who are in charge of the city, the official, meaning they want to make requests from them. So they want to greet them. So that's why he learned in the Brisa that he wants to make the Erev in the direction of the Nachri. Chacham loy kasha, but the Chacham is also not a kasha. Have a Maisa Pirka. In the case of our Mishnah, is talking about a Maisa Pirka, a person who gives a drasha, and so he wants to go to hear the drasha from the Talmud Chacham. So that's why he wants to go in that direction. In the Brisa that it says that he wants to avoid the Talmud Chacham, it's talking about someone who's a Melamed Tinekes. So therefore, the way Rashi learns it is that there is assumed to be two Talmidei Chacham coming. One is a Melamed Tinekes, he's coming from one direction, and the other direction is coming the one who's going to give a drasha. Now he wants to go to the drasha. He doesn't want to go to the Melamed Tinekes. So therefore, he wants to go to the opposite direction of where the Melamed is, because he wants to go to the opposite. The Melamed is coming, let's say, from the east. He wants to go to the west to go to the one who's going to give the drasha. So therefore, he says if the Melamed Tinekes comes to the east, he wants to go to the west, or vice versa. That's one shot. Other Rishonim say that it's talking simply about a Melamed Tinekes. He wants to avoid him because there might be some discussions about tuition, so he wants to avoid him. So that's how we resolve the stira between the Mishnah and the Brisa of where he wants to avoid the Nachri or greet the Nachri. He wants to avoid the Melamed Tinekes or greet the Talmud Chacham. Rabbi Yehuda says that if one of them was his Rebbe, we have to assume that he would want to go to his Rebbe. So that's the direction, that is the direction where his Erev is. Rabbanan, they argue because they sometimes he wants to hear somebody else. He wants to hear a different drasha, a different opinion, a different Talmud Chacham. So therefore, it's not muchach. We cannot assume necessarily that he necessarily would want to go to the direction of his Rebbe. So therefore, he still could make that choice. Rav says, the way our version of the Mishnah is not correct because of what Ayah learned. The Tane Ayah, because Ayah learned in the Braisa, Rabbi Yehuda Mar Ein Adam Masna Sheit Dvarim Ke'achad. That Rabbi Yehuda argues with the principle of Breira. He does not hold a Breira, and therefore a person cannot make a condition for two things simultaneously. He can only make a one-part condition. He can say that if the Chacham comes to the Mizrach, I want my Erev to be in the Mizrach. He can say that if he comes to the Mizrach, I want it to be in the Mizrach. And if he comes to the West, I want my Erev to be in the West. But he can't say that if he comes in both directions, I can choose on Shabbos, I can choose whatever direction I want, because that's only valid if you hold a Breira. And he does not hold a Breira. He holds you cannot determine on Shabbos and say retroactively that's where we would consider his Erev to be. Why do you say he can't do it in both directions? Well, even if it's to the east or even to the west, he's still making a determination on Shabbos. He's still saying, well, if the Chacham will come tomorrow to the east, meaning, as Rashi explains, on the onset of Shabbos, perhaps the Chacham has not come to either direction. He's far away from the city, and perhaps he has not come to either direction, and maybe he won't come to any direction. So you're still making a determination on Shabbos. You say, if he reaches in the east, and if he comes within the east where I could reach him from the Erev that I placed down to the east, then I could reach his destination where he's arrived at, then you say, I want that to be the Erev. Well, on the onset of Shabbos, perhaps he's further away from there. He hasn't come within 2,000 amas of the Erev that you placed down in the east. So it's only if he arrives, when he arrives on Shabbos, that he arrives at that destination, that you say that, well, if that's the case, the Erev should take effect. Perhaps he won't even come to that direction. So you're still relying on Breira. You're still saying, if he comes on Shabbos to within 2,000 amas of the Erev that I placed towards the east, then I want that Erev to take effect. And then we say, if in fact he does come to that destination, then that the Erev should take effect. So it's still relying on Breira. So what's the difference between if he says in both directions or one direction? And our answer is Amar Rabbi Yochanan and Chanami. That is true. That also would not be valid according to Rabbi Yehuda. But what are we talking about where Rabbi Yehuda says it is valid? Amar Rabbi Yochanan. We're saying where the case is the Chacham already arrived at his destination. Now you may not have known on the onset of Shabbos, Erev Shabbos, you may not have known where he arrived. But what you're saying is wherever the Chacham arrived, that's where I want my Erev to be. So that's not Breira. That's just you're missing some information. You're saying the Erev should be Chal on the onset of Shabbos in that direction where the Chacham already is. Where he is, now you don't know if he's in the east, you don't know if he's in the west, but wherever he is, you say, I want my Erev to be Chal. That's where my Erev should take effect. You don't know where it is. If you find out tomorrow, then you'll know, and then you'll be able to go in that direction. But the Erev is not being Chal retroactively. The Kfar Bal Chacham and the Chacham already came, and that means is that the Chacham is there, and you're saying, I want my Erev to be Chal now, wherever he is. So it's Chal now. It's Chal on the onset of Shabbos. When you find out about it, you'll be able to go in that direction. So that's not dependent on Breira. But to make a condition that wherever he will come, and if there's a Chacham that comes in both directions, I'll decide tomorrow where I want to go, that's totally on Breira. And Ayah says Rabbi Yehuda does not hold a Breira. Well, why are you saying that our version of the Mishnah is incorrect because of Ayah, and Ayah learned that Rabbi Yehuda does not hold a Breira? Maybe we should say that Ayah is incorrect because our version of the Mishnah says that Rabbi Yehuda does hold a Breira. Gemara says no. As we'll see in the coming Amud that we have a proof from a different Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda does not hold of Breira, and therefore you cannot make the condition that the way it was stated in our Mishnah.